No? Okay, better? Better. So let's give another round of applause for that wonderful performance by Michael Abramovich. Thank you very much, Michael. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Côte Saint-Luc Reads. I'm Janine West. I'm the library's director of library services. And before we begin, I want to say a few words about the One Community, One Book program. So since its inception in 1998, when the Washington Center for the Book hosted American author Russell Banks, communities all over North America have embraced the notion of building community through a shared reading experience. We first launched Côte Saint-Luc Reads back in, believe it or not, 2008, as a way for us to promote and celebrate a culture of reading in our own city. Our very first pick was Can You Hear the Night Bird Call? I don't know if anybody remembers attending that event, by author Anita Rao Badami. And we were so thrilled to have the author accept our invitation. And since then, we've invited and received such well-known authors as Lawrence Hill, Eva Stashniak, Nancy Richler, Daniel Mendelsohn, Kathy Reichs, and many, many more. This year, our pick was The Inheritance by Joanna Goodman, and we are so honored to have our author here with us, along with moderator Tara Schwartz. But before we get to our program, I want to acknowledge and give thanks to some special supporters of ours. First, a thank you to ProQuest. ProQuest is an information and database provider who has generously given library members free access to ancestry.ca for a very limited time period. I think it's about until mid-end of November. So if you would like more information on how to access ancestry.ca, our librarian Antonella is here tonight, and she can tell you all about it at the end of the program. I also want to give a special thanks to Andreas Gasaris from Paragraphe Bookstore, who has supported and partnered with us for many, many years. Andreas is over there. He is here tonight offering Joanna Goodman's newest book, The Inheritance, as well as her previous books for sale. You can also thank him for his continued support by visiting his table and purchasing your own copy at the end of the program. And just to let you know that Joanna will be on hand to sign copies of her book also at the end. Tara Schwartz has also written a book, and her book is also available for sale. It's called Can't Keep Falling, and I'm sure she will also be happy to sign a bought copy. I want to thank the VCOP volunteers. They always come out to help us out at our programs, and I think there's 2 or 3 here tonight. Isaac in the background, so thank you to Susie and her team who are always here for us. A special thank you to the programs department team, Danielle, Maria, and Angela for all of their efforts in not only planning but organizing, bringing this beautiful program for you tonight. And then finally, thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. We so appreciate the fact that you chose us, and we really are so happy to see you all here, but also so many familiar faces. It means a lot to us. So without further ado, I would like to invite Danielle to the stage, and she will introduce our esteemed author, as well as the moderator for tonight's program.
Thank you very much, Janine, and thank you also to some more of our colleagues, Lisa Milner, who helped plan the event, and Antonella Lally, who helped out tonight. Thank you, Antonella. Joanna Goodman is the author of 7 novels, including the new instant bestseller, The Inheritance, and the #1 national bestseller, The Home for Unwanted Girls, which was on a Canadian bestseller list for more than 6 months. Her other novels include The Forgotten Daughter and The Finishing School, both national bestsellers. Her stories have appeared in The Fiddlehead, B&A Fiction, Event, The New Quarterly, and White Wall Review, as well as excerpted in Elizabeth Harper's fiction anthology, A Room at the Heart of Things. Originally from Montreal, Joanna now lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 kids. Tara Schwartz spent more than 2 decades as a reporter and senior news anchor for CTV television. She has interviewed hundreds of people, hosted multiple events, and moderated panels of all kinds. Tara has won 4 Canadian Journalism Awards. She has been named a Woman of Influence by NAMAT Canada. She is currently the Vice President of Communications and Marketing at the MUHC Foundation, where she works to advocate to equality and excellence in healthcare through philanthropy. Tara is also a published author. Her first book, a memoir on her path to motherhood, was published in April 2022 and is called Can't Help Falling, A Long Road to Motherhood, which Janine told you will also be available here for sale. With no further ado, I would like to welcome Tara Schwartz and our evening's guest, Joanna Goodman. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Let's try that again. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Joanna, why don't you do a little test? Can everyone hear me now?
No, this one.
But now. Okay, there we go. I'll try not to. Okay, perfect. All right, well, I'll echo the thank you all for taking the evening to spend it with us. We're really grateful, and I hear that we're also on Zoom, so on behalf of Joanna and I, we want to say welcome to everyone who's spending their evening with us on Zoom, so thank you for coming out. Before we start with the interview, so... Why did you hear myself?
Okay, I'm gonna give it
Basically, how we is we'll do a short interview, but really we want your questions. We know that you have lots of things that you want from Joanna. We might have to speak really long. Okay, we're switching. It kind of works. Test. We did try to do this before you arrived. We apologize, but we will get it. Do you want to try it?
Yeah. She has it in her hands.
We'll keep this here as like a safe, like a little backup. So we'll do an interview period, and then you'll be able to ask Joanna all kinds of questions, and then as mentioned, she would be happy to sign her book before you leave. Before I jump into the interview, I just want to tell you all a really funny story. So when she walked in, she said to me, I have to ask you a question. So it turns out this whole 6 degrees of separation, which I find, inexhaustibly fascinating, is that Joanna has a good friend who is a good friend of mine when I was in university. So we have a connection. So I find those are always so fun. I find the community is smaller and smaller. So appreciate your attention. We'll jump right into the interview and then we'll get to your questions in just a little bit, okay? All right. Yes. What's your dad's name? Hi, Kenny. Okay.
You have to give her the mic. You have to give her the mic.
Yeah. Where's the other mic? Can you hear now? Yes. Okay, hi, Dad. And Goodman.
You have to get rid of the other one.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Alrighty, okay, so we're gonna jump right in. So, first of all, congratulations on another incredible book. I'm gonna ease into my interview. I'm gonna ease into it by saying, my first question is gonna be an easy one. Oh, I feel like I have two microphones now. It's gonna be an easy one. So, where we are and where we come from. Oh, what is it that is it the food? Is it, what do you miss? I want to know what you miss.
Okay, let's
Bagels.
Yeah. Stick with the food. I really miss the food. There's a feeling in Montreal that, and I've been in Toronto for many, many, many years, and I have a business there, and my family is there, so I don't want to disparage Toronto as my home, but it's just, there's something about Montreal that, you know, yes, the food is better here, yes, the bagels are better here, yes, the houses are prettier, the neighborhoods are nice, but there's also, and it may be just like childhood special feelings, but there's no city like Montreal, especially in the fall. I have a thing with Montreal in the fall that I just love so much. So it's, yeah, more feeling.
Does this go? Okay. So now I'm going to jump right into the actual question. So I think this is a question that everyone wonders, at least I do, of every author. Where do your ideas to your book come from? How do they take shape?
How is it shifting?
I mean, it is different for every book. I mean, with The Home for Unwanted Girls and Clouds, those were very much based on nuggets from my mom's life and stories that I always wanted to tell about growing up in Montreal, half French, half English. And there will be a third in the trilogy of Montreal books about my Jewish side, which I'm actually working on now. So there's always a different, you know, this one that I'm like currently working on, it's been there for years and years and years, and there's like, okay, now I'm ready. With The Inheritance, I think the seed was planted many, many years ago when I read Bleak House by Charles Dickens. And it's like a very, very, very long book, but it's about an inheritance that drags on for like decades and decades and decades and decades. And what really fascinated me about it was this idea that all of their lives were on hold. Like the tentacles of the possibility of the money that they were all going to get their hands on just went into generation after generation. The kids grew up waiting for the money, and you know, no one really did anything. No one accomplished. They were just always waiting for the money. And I think something about the idea of that really struck a chord. It's not even for me about the money. You know, it's a great vehicle, but for me, the theme is really like the idea of like your life being on hold until when you get that thing. And I think we were both talking about this before. We both shared a very similar fertility journey, and you know, it's the same for me as what I wrote about in The Inheritance. It's like when I have this kid, when I get my baby, when I'm a mother, and I really look back and I think like in many ways my life was on hold till those two babies were out of me. And like, that's what the book is about for me. It's just whether you're waiting for the man or to be thin when I lose 15 pounds. Like, it's just this idea of like not being in the present, and not something that, you know, I has always struck a chord for me. I think many of us live that way. So I found it very, you know, resonant.
Is that good? I'll try. I'll go back and forth. back point. So there are so many powerful themes in the inheritance. Loss, grief, violence, on top of violence. Is it hard to write that kind of story?
Yes, it's hard to write those parts of it, for sure. I will say, again, having written about the Duplessis course, and it's not to keep bringing that up, but I mean, that was the hardest thing I ever wrote about, hands down. And so, while yes, obviously the years is very difficult to write, it was much shorter and it was much, you know, I didn't do research around it. I didn't have to do research on that. Whereas it was the research of the horrible tragedies over a period of a year that really got under my skin. So yeah, it's always hard to write about, but then there's also at the same time like this feeling of being compelled to tell the story, and I'm so into it and so driven that it kind of balances out as long as I go to take care of myself after a session.
You have to be the right mindset. You have to be in the right mindset. You have to be in the right place to write those kinds of words.
But you have to write them. You have to write them. And it's not like everyone is just like, I'm doing it. So
I have to ask you about the subject of law in the book, because it was so in-depth and so interesting and so detailed that I was curious, like, is it something that you had to study, and how much did you have to learn about it in order to make those lawyers' voices so legitimate and so real?
thank you, because that's always a huge concern when you're completely stepping out of your comfort zone to write something you know nothing about. And law, and it's like New York law, New York estate law. So the way it began was I went to New York, I went to the surrogate court, I visited it, I was in the room, I was in the building, so the details of the building are very much from being there. And then what I did was I started ordering transcripts of actual estate cases. And those really, really helped because I could see how they, how the lawyers spoke their language. I mean, I obviously wanted to go much deeper than an episode of, how LA or maybe Law and Order, anything where like, there had to be depth, right? More than I object, so the transcripts were amazing. I really studied how, everyone spoke to each other, how the judge handled it, all of that stuff. And the surrogate court, which is the inheritance court and judge, is, it's different. So that was a huge help. And a lot of the dialogue came from there. And then I reached out to a lawyer, an estate lawyer in New York, and I was going to hire him. I figured, no way in 20 years with an estate lawyer in Manhattan just be like, oh, sure, I'll help you with your book. But he was like, I was going to pay him per hour. I wasn't sure what that was going to cost, but he was like, oh no, this is so cool. And he read all my law chapters, and he gave me incredible feedback. If something wasn't accurate, he, corrected it, and he was amazing. And he just wanted to sign copies.
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting because I hear you talk about the research element, not just in this book, but in previous books. So is that something that you enjoy as much as the writing part, like digging into the research of something before you write it?
Yes, but only because I only write about what really excites me or interests me. So, not that the Duplessis was exciting me, but once I found that, I was like in such a rabbit hole of years. But I'm always only ever writing about things that are meaningful to me or that, I want to know more about. So the research actually is one of the most enjoyable parts for me, because I'm already into the subject. Right now I'm working on this new book, and it's about Montreal in the 60s, and
I'm at the part of Expo 67, which is right before I was born, but I'm immersed. It's like I was there. I mean, it's crazy, and I love it because my mom worked, well, she worked there, but she was like obsessed with it, she was there, and so that kind of thing, especially when it's part of my history or my city, you know, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Very, very nice. Let's talk about character development, which I really loved in this book, I have to say. And for me, and I'm sure for many readers, it really is the sign of a great book. When you get to know these characters and you root for them and you watch them grow and you want to have conversations with them. So talk us through, how do you build up these lives in a book? What goes into building these characters and their growth?
I mean, honestly, there's always a piece of either me or someone in my life.
Oh, interesting.
Always. I mean,
In every character, in every book.
Cycle through here. Main characters, I would say so. Maybe I don't, you know, I'm not super close, but something is, you know, some quality in a person or characteristic is intrigued me enough that they're going to be. But even most characters will have similar themes running through their lives that I have. Otherwise, I couldn't write it authentically. I think certainly for my main characters, certainly for the women who are my main characters, there's always something I'm grappling with, or my mom grappled with. And, you know, I interviewed my mom for years and years and years and years. But, you know, I worked on those books long before she passed away. So we had hundreds of hours of conversations. So, you know, if it wasn't me, it was her. But my daughter, like, no one, everyone's fair game. You know, everyone is, I don't do it in a way like I'm, but there's more pieces in everyone. And it's always coming from really.
I love that, because it's almost keeping those that are meaningful to you alive in the pages always, right? I think that's a lovely way to do it. Are some characters harder to bring to life than others? Because you're bringing them to life, right? You meet them in the first few pages or the first few chapters, and then they have a life there. Are some harder to bring into that life?
You know, I would say that if they are, it's because I'm not writing them well, and they're probably not meant to be in the book, or something's not authentic about it. It's interesting because as I mentioned, I'm working on a new book, and I kind of had this moment where I was like, there's a couple of these characters who are important, and they feel shallow and surfacey to me. They don't feel they have the depth that I want them to have. Like, I don't know who they are. And it was coming across. And so, you know, I don't want to say I scrapped it, but it's kind of like, I'm going back to the drawing board. I don't look at it like it's harder. I look at it like, what have I missed? And in this case, what was interesting is that I realized, like, in all the years of researching my French-Canadian side, I knew nothing about my Jewish. I'm half French-Canadian, half Jewish. Nothing about, you know, I'm close with my Jewish side, but like, I didn't know my great-grandfather's name. I'm like 55, and I was like, who's his name? Who is he? I didn't know where they came from. So I think that was coming across in these characters who were very, like, one-dimensional. So I went on Ancestry.ca, and I looked up, and I looked up, and I got so into it, and like, my great-grandparents are from Minsk, and and the more I, you know, not that gives me insight to who they were, but it gave me a lot of insight into their history, which then I could, you know, really run with. So, just to answer your question, if it's not feeling like they've got depth and soul and authenticity, I'm not doing it good. Like, I have to do something different.
Interesting. So let's go from character development to dialogue, because there was a lot of dialogue in the Inheritance. There's a lot of dialogue, and it was so real. People that I wanted to hear from, and I wanted them to keep talking. And I want you to talk us through sort of the beauty and the challenges of making these characters come to life through their dialogue. How do you find what they're gonna say? How do you give people so many words?
I love that. I mean, I love dialogue.
Yeah.
I think it is a strength
It
of mine
shows.
as a writer.
Yeah.
I read a lot, and some writers are like the most magnificent prose writers in the world. I'm good at dialogue, and I love writing it. It just flows for me. I just love writing as it comes to me. But a lot of it is hurt, right? Like I've always I remember one time I was in a coffee shop and I was writing, and there was a couple who sat down beside me, and they were very, very clearly on the first date, and they were older. And 100% true, the character in this book, who is the person who assaults Virginia, their first date, that whole creepy conversation was almost verbatim. Because once he started talking, I was like, this guy is crap, and I started just writing everything he was saying. He was saying the craziest stuff. If you read the book, you know what he says. And I just was like, this is gonna go in a book. This was before I started writing this book. And so I wrote, I just, because I was already writing. They didn't know, but I was like, the time he went biking in Hawaii, but he Jewish, but the whole thing. And that is that dialogue.
So do you go looking for those all the time? Or are you kind of like, oh, something interesting, no?
No, when it's shockingly interesting and I happen to be sitting with a laptop, but I'll hear something and I'll jot something down, or something hilarious or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think probably most writers would say the same thing. I'm always an ear for a great dialogue or a conversation.
I think it's probably something we, as humans, all do. We'll hear something and we think, oh man, that would be a great line in a book. But you have the opportunity to do it, right?
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
do it to everyone in my family, for sure.
Do they recognize themselves in the characters? Do your family, your children,
My kids don't.
no. Your husband, does he recognize himself in characters?
He's all the men in the book. He's all the good guys. Yeah, for sure. I said that. That's my custom from
And so other people, do they recognize themselves, little tidbits of themselves in
yes.
characters?
And sometimes I use their name. I don't use their names as who they are, but I'll use their name Estelle, and she knows it's because I went to high school. It's not the most common name that my friends would be like, oh, I love that you use my name or my last name. Bunt was one of my employees, and the minute I hired her, I'm using her last name in the book. It's too like Bunt. I loved it.
Another unique element to the inheritance that I really loved, and that was unusual, was the love story. And I'm assuming that you've all read the book, because I'm going into full spoiler alert moment right here. So what I love, oh, I'm sorry. Block your ears for just a second, just for one question. It was a love story that didn't need to be tied up in a pretty pink bow. Joshua could be there for whatever amount of time he was there for, and it was left so open-ended, and in many ways it was almost implied that maybe it wouldn't even work, but that was okay. And I wonder, why did you choose to go that path? Which I really appreciated, but I wondered why you chose to go that direction.
Well, I always saw him as her healing, what's the word? Exactly, he was her, I don't want to say rebound, but it's not what she needed to find herself again. She was with her husband since she was in college. That's all he was ever to me. But that doesn't mean it's not a beautiful, special thing, and the connection is real, and there's incredible respect. And so I had never had them winding up together. And my editor, who was they wind up together, but my agent was they would never wind up together, and I don't want them, And in the end, I kind of did what I felt was the most realistic, which was maybe they will. They're attracted to each other. It's probably not going to work out, but she'll go back and they'll hang out a few more times. And actually, maybe it will work out, but if you're a romantic, it'll work out, and if you're pragmatic, it won't work out. And if you're my agent, you're happy, and if you're the editor who wants a happy ending, because it's a HarperCollins book, then you're gonna get a happy ending. And like for me, that works for me, because I do think at that point where the book ends, she has no idea. She's not thinking she wants to be married, she doesn't think he's gonna be a great dad, but she's super attracted. She loves being with him, and that's how it has to end. Right?
Are endings your favorite part, the toughest part, beginnings the toughest part? What do you find that you enjoy the most, and what's the most challenging?
In the beginning, I find that I'm right in there in the opening, and the middle is always, I think anyone said the middle is always the most challenging. There's a word where it's like the long torture or something like that. The ending, they are challenging because I want the ending to be great. I want so there's like, you're working to a standard of having a good ending and not too cheesy and not too wrapped in a bow, but you don't want people being depressed at the end. But I do find when the book is what it's meant to be, the ending typically does. That last sentence always comes to me. The ending sort of reveals, and I was born that it does. It just kind of reveals. I've never known what that last page and chapter is going to be ever. So I'm writing it, and I've never not had an ending.
When you say that you don't know what the last page or chapter is that sort of the actual words? But do you know the split? Do you sort of plan out your story in advance? Do you know what's going to happen, or does it unfold as you're telling their stories?
Both. I'll have, a skeleton outline, and sometimes I might not have from beginning to end, but I'll definitely have beginning to the first half to get me, and then I can't sit down blind with nothing. But I also know that I have this sort of outline, and it's to guide me, but lots of stuff can happen on the road, right? And particularly at the end, again, spoiler alert, but when she gets the notice that someone's come forward, that just came in that moment, and I was like, yeah, that totally happened. And then, another twist. So I have an idea where I'm going, but I always know more will be revealed.
A lot of mother-daughter relationships in this book. I know you have a daughter. How does that play into how you write? And your mother, you were very close to your mom. How do those mother-daughter relationships play out specifically in this book?
I literally only write about it. That's why I can't think of a book that was not a mother and daughter story. Sometimes there's two daughters, sometimes there's one, sometimes there's three, but there's always a mother and a daughter relationship. And in Inheritance, it's, Virginia and her daughter, but also the daughter and her daughter. And, that's my, I was very, very close with my mom. As was my mom with my daughter. So she was sort of my husband. And I'm very, very, very close with my daughter. And so that's what the Inheritance really is for me. It's obviously it's the most fun, but it's really the Inheritance of, the book opens with Virginia and her father, and I put that in because, for Arden and Tate, that's where their story begins, from their mother's low self-esteem and whatever happened in their household then. And then it went on to the next generation, and then what Arden is struggling with her teenage daughter and the cell phone, all that stuff. This is part of all of our lives who are mothering in 2020, right? So, it's very much coming from just growing living. And what is happening around the community.
And the focus on these characters really, there's a lot of mother, a lot of daughter, and the men, were not so nice in this particular book. You've got your good guys, but there's an element of sort of negativity to a lot of the men in the book. Larry has her negative side, and obviously the gentleman that was horrible to Virginia. How do you choose, okay, this is really going to be this character, and here's what he's going to do? How do you go there with the male characters?
I feel like, Hal is a beautiful man, and
He was
a
a
loving,
sweetheart.
father figure who took care of her. I feel Joshua was a good man, and Scott was a good husband. So I felt like there was a balance, but yeah, there was a rapist in the book, and that was part of it. And, the lawyer was aggressive. He was, based on the person I know in that field, and that's what I mean when there's always a hint of people I know that come through, and, I try to balance it so that you're not coming away. I happen to think Virginia is as flawed as anyone else in the book, so, yeah, I think aside from the one glaringly obvious villain, I think it's a lot more kind of the way humans are.
That's a very, very good point. And how really was one of my favorite characters. I really did like him. You've written 7 books, and I'm curious as to what changes as a writer from book to book. Do you feel comfort in the familiarity that you've written books before, so there's a comfort there? Is there a pressure, this was a bestseller, this next one has to be a bestseller? What is it that comes up as you grow and flourish for all intents and purposes in this career? How do you navigate that as a woman?
More pressure, because I wish I could tell you, it's just so much easier with it. It's so not easy. The writing is the writing. The writing process is as joyful and beautiful and wonderful as it was with the first one. It is different because the first one, you almost don't know you're going to. In fact, when I was 24, I didn't know the first one was going to be published. You're just writing, you're free. Same with the second one, even. Then having the bestseller, which was a real turning point, that's a bit of a game changer because all of a sudden there is a pressure. And it's not on, actually I shouldn't even say it is a bit on the writing, because there's a little bit of is this what the people want? Is this going to be as good? Will it be on the list as long as the other one was? So after Home for Unwanted Girls, the pressure was intense with the Forgotten Daughter, which was the follow-up. And bizarrely, the Forgotten Daughter came out, I don't know, the day COVID blew up, or the fall of COVID. So, the autumn. So everything was canceled. I had all the touring, everything was canceled overnight. So there was nothing. So in a weird way, it was I never knew what it would have done. I never knew how it would have compared. I never went on the road with it. I never had an event. As the year progressed and people figured out Zoom, I started doing some book clubs. In a very strange way, it took away all the second, the follow-up to the. So Inheritance is really the first book that's come out since COVID ended, and I had the success with Home for Unwanted. And I'm very grateful. I is on the list and did great, but it's much more high stakes. It feels,
I get that. Yeah, and I get that. I mean, 7 books, and I don't even know if this is something that you would even answer publicly. Is it like children? Do you have a favorite, but you don't want to tell us which one it is?
No, I do have it. My favorite is The Home for Unwanted Girls because it's the story of my mom's life. It's so bittersweet because I always wanted to tell my mom's story. I've always written since I was 5 years old. I was always writing stories, and I always wanted to write her story. She grew up half French, half English, as did I, and everything about Montreal, the politics, everything the referendums that I lived through. So I just wanted it in a book. So I interviewed her, and I wrote so many versions when she was alive, and then she passed away the year before I finished the version that ended up being published. And so, and then it kind of blew up, and it was, it was a big thing, and, I always felt like she was navigating the whole thing, and, it's there's no, it's the most special book to me. And I love that I have most people don't interview their parents with like notepads and tape recorders for a decade. So I know a lot of, I got to know so much of her childhood and her like all these things. Even now, writing this Expo chat, I remember how she talked about Expo. So the book about my mom is really, it's number one. And then, I love my Montreal. There's something about Montreal I can't stop reading about. I don't know. People are like, are you going to write a historical novel about Ireland or, the residential schools? And I'm like, no. And it's not because I love writing historical fiction. It's because I am obsessed with like my Montreal roots and
Lovely. That's a beautiful tribute to your mom. That's a novel I see. It's really beautiful. I want to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to do like a short little thing we're going to get to. What do you love most about being a writer? What is it that really, wow, this is such a great job. I love this.
It's like a writer's high. There's no other way to describe it. And it happens when I'm in the middle of the book. And it's not just when I'm writing, because when I'm writing is great. Like, I'm in the zone, I'm not having thoughts, I'm not, whatever. I'm not worried about, I'm just like in that, I'm just writing. But as the characters are going, like, I just get so into it, and then like I'm in bed as I'm thinking about them, and then I can't wait to get up and get to them, and I just want to research this thing. So just like this whole thing that just sucks me into like the best possible way. And like so much so, I just always feel bad for people who don't know who don't experience that. And people are like, how could you write 300 pages? I'd rather put a bullet in my head, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain it to you, but it's like the best thing in my life.
Love is love, right? Love is love. So I do want to make sure that we get to your questions, and I know we've gone for about 30 minutes now, but for those of you who've seen my interviews before, I always like to end with a little bit of a rapid fire question series. So it's only 13 questions, most of them 13, lucky 13, and it's either yes or no or one word answer. So super quick, you up for it? Easy, easy. So, okay, here we go. Chocolate or vanilla? Sunrise or sunset? Sunrise. Summer or winter? Laptop or paper and pen? Laptop. The United States or Canada? Canada. Dogs or cats? Books or movies?
Both.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be? I'll tell you mine. I would fly.
Would you? Yeah. Thanks for reading people's minds.
Ooh, nice. I like it. No?
Actually,
Okay, no? Okay.
That would be terrible. Fine. Anti-aging, is that a superpower?
It's not a superpower.
Okay, fine.
All right, something yet to do on your bucket list.
I want to go to Australia.
Nice. Australia. Are you glass half full or half empty?
Full, half full for sure.
Love it. If you could have a beer, a tea, a glass of wine, whatever your pleasure, with anyone, living or dead, who would it be? It can be the first person that pops into your mind. It doesn't have to be the person. It can be a person.
Eddie Vedder.
Nice. Oceans or mountains?
Ocean.
Desert island book, which one would it be?
That's like
A book. A desert island book.
American. One book. Great answer.
All right, there we go. Joanna, thank you so much for your time for my question. Really appreciate it. We certainly want to make sure that you have time to answer your questions. So, I'm not 100% sure of the format here, but do you want to raise your hand and maybe I'll hand you my microphone? Maybe I'll do a little walkabout. I'm going to go for a walkabout. You stay here. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to come over. Hold on.
First, I want to congratulate you and be very happy. We have Canadian author, similar to the American authors who write contemporary fiction, like Jennifer Weiner, she writes a lot about women, what they're going through, very honest. It's embarrassing to read, but we had other questions we've been asked, but the character is asking, so it's great that you bring out these, weaknesses and strengths, what women go through in their lives. So thank you, because I really found an author, this first book of yours I read, that I say, wow, contemporary Canadian author that I can relate to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a little bit older than you. I remember Expo 67 when I was 4 years old. You can interview my mother, she's 86, she's a Holocaust survivor, she loved Expo 67, she always talks about it. One of the themes that I really got out of this book, I have an adult daughter, so they're now young adults, and I went through a lot of difficulty as a single mother, so I totally relate to Arden and the difficulty of having a daughter that you want to have a relationship with, but it's difficult to talk to. It's on the door, they don't want to talk, they're going through something difficult, and you feel helpless. And I really love Arden in this book because I could relate to her going through being a mom with the daughter, and also with mother, that the intergenerational relationship. I could identify with.
Thank you.
First of all, thanks very much for a very informative evening and a little bit of insight into you and your writing and such a job of moderating. My question is, are there family aspects that you should take the business of their personalities into your books? Do they ever recognize themselves?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do they?
Always. I've never like offended or pissed anyone off. There was one where I was like, I gave her a heads up and she was like, oh, no, it's fine. So far so good, but the next one coming, watch out, Dad.
Did anyone watch Phil Donahue? I feel like Phil Donahue running around the audience, and I'm channeling my neighbor Phil Donahue.
Beautiful. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been optioned. So it's been optioned for a series, like a streaming, like a Netflix series. So what that means though is they are now putting together the team, like the producers, the writers, the this. It doesn't mean it's getting made, but it's in the works. It's like the money raising period now. So yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
We're gonna all root for you.
Yeah. Do you know her? Because I don't. It's actually a townships connection too, because my mom had a house in the townships for years, which is why so much of that book is set there. But yeah, I don't know her. Very much one of the things, and people do reach out a lot, and again, with Home for Unwanted, because of the subject matter, I heard from a lot of orphans, like a lot of people separated from their children, and so it's very meaningful when you hear from people and they love the book and it resonated. And you are the first person to mention that about the inheritance. It is interesting that it has not come up very often in any of my. Thank you.
I think every character had a lot of healing to go through in this book today.
Yeah.
In their own way. Don't we all? Don't we all? And it's a very good point. Does anybody else have a question? Joe, come here.
I was surprised that you thought Scott was a good husband. I thought it was a good father, but I didn't think it was.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I think what I mean is he loved her. He loved her, and I mean, I think this is really the point of all the characters and everything. They're all so flawed, but I see him as good. Maybe my idea of good and bad is very black and white. So like, rape is bad, not rape is good, guy. But I can take your point. I guess I just feel he was a great dad. He loved her. He was faithful to her, but derailed in his, greed, I guess. Flawed. Let's agree to say very flawed, but good.
Flawed. Yeah.
Good at his heart.
Which we weren't sure halfway through the book, right? There was a whole mystery about is he good or was he not good? So it was almost a relief to be like, okay, he was.
He was flawed, but not in like he was not unfaithful. He was not, but he made many mistakes, of course.
But to your point, who hasn't? Okay. That's the thing about your characters, they're very authentic and very real. Any other questions? Okay.
I want to mention that your father, Kenny, and I are first cousins.
Are you, what?
Yes.
Wait, what?
And after researching the Jewish side, I may have some information for you.
She's going to be a character in your book.
I can't even see you, but what's your
Do you
name?
want to stand up? Stand up.
Ms. Goodman,
Yeah.
Carolyn Goodman, and he knows me very well.
So you're my dad's first cousin?
First cousin,
So wait, who's your parents?
Bella and Larry Goodman, but they're deceased.
Okay,
And Sydney and Dorothy.
those are my grandparents.
That's right.
So Bella came up in my ancestry.ca.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, she did.
Everybody watch out for this character.
Very well. I spoke to Kenny recently.
Well, he's watching this, so you can say hi to him.
Hi, Kenny.
I love this. That's great. Any other questions for Joanna?
Any other relatives in the audience?
Yeah.
It's about. Just make it this the author's choice.
I've never had an editor make me do something that I wasn't 100% comfortable with. Like my editor wanted me to, she didn't want me. She's like, can they not wind up together? Like, can they? And I'll be like, no, but I hear you, and maybe we can leave a little. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm comfortable with it. For me, I'm always like, what's make the book the best? What's the best ending? So I've never had an experience where my editors intervened on like especially how the book would end. Where they do like to is the titles. That's tougher to negotiate with them. So the titles, I've had to and the covers, I didn't come up with the inheritance, actually. Yeah. You know what, I will say on my 7th book, I know enough not to get attached to any title. I've never had one that stayed the course. I come up with them, but after they make me change them. But so I'll go with the working title, and my working title for this was the Gold Diggers, and I did not like that. But I did love the inheritance, because for me, they got what I really was, to me, this is about what the generations pass on. So I loved it. I still like Gold Diggers.
Rome, the other side's been fantastic. Okay, here we go.
Hi. I've read several of your books. This one was like a page turner. I couldn't stop reading. It was great, except the last paragraph. That kind of, if the glass is half full, like, you know what's going to happen. And if the glass is half empty, you know what's going to happen. Well, it's how you interpret it. So I would hope that they would get what they're supposed to get, but when someone, came up, another name came up, it's like, are we going to have a sequel, or do we just have to figure out what's going to happen? Because they waited so long, they finally got a break, and like, someone came forward.
Okay, and here's the point of that, and that's fair, but here's the point of that. Will the inheritance make them happier? Like, is that the happy ending, getting the money? Or is it everything that they've kind of figured out along the way, and, is her going back to work, or following a career, or falling in love, or, putting her children into a healing program? Like, for me, the point was not so much, will they get the money, or will they, someone's thwarted the money. It was, who says the money is the happy ending? Who says when getting that money is the thing that makes them okay? What if the money is the thing that derails where they've gotten to by that point? Do you know what I mean?
Fair. I think it's like some people just like have real closure, and some people are okay with being sensitive.
Don't read the Homefront one, girls.
I think we have time for the last question. Does anyone have an ice?
I love Meg Wolitzer for contemporary. I love Elizabeth Stout. I love Anne Patchett. I love old Margaret Atwood. I'm struggling a lot with Alice Munro these days, but I'm not going to take away her writing. Philip Roth. Love Philip Roth. I just finished, oh my God, a Philip Roth book. Is it American Pastoral? Is that, yeah. I was gonna say that for my favorite because it's so fresh and it was so brilliant. But yeah, I literally just finished it. Thank you. Can I just say thank you, Tara? The questions were fantastic. You made it very easy and took off all the stress around the public speaking.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you, Tara. And we would like to say a special thank you to Edgewood Florists for supplying these beautiful flowers. Thank you. And we want to remind you of another great event right here with Tara again and Daniel J. Levitin on Wednesday, October 9th at 6:30 p.m. Mark your calendars. Thank you very much, everyone.